My son's friend locked the door after entering my room. Gay love story. Hey Mr. Carter, your son said I could wait in here. I froze at the doorway. Still gripping my keys, gym bag slung over my shoulder, t-shirt damp from the late afternoon heat, and there he was, Eli, sitting calmly at the edge of my bed, scrolling through his phone like it was any other Tuesday. The door was shut. Locked. He didn't look startled when I walked in. Just glanced up and offered a quiet nod, like this was exactly where he was supposed to be. My mind raced. Why was he in here? Why wasn't he downstairs like the rest of the kids usually were? Hey, I managed. I didn't know anyone was home yet. He gave a lazy shrug. Yeah, we got here like 15 minutes ago. Parker went to pick up food. I asked if I could wait here. He said it was cool. His voice was casual, but something about the way he said wait here felt practiced. I closed the door behind me, pure habit, and regretted it immediately. Eli was still looking at me. Not with guilt. Not even curiosity. Just steady. I placed the gym bag near the dresser and walked to the closet, suddenly all too aware of how quiet the room felt. The hum of the ceiling fan. The distant car on the road. The way his shoes were neatly placed just beside the bed, like he'd been there longer than a few minutes. How was the gym? He asked, eyes following me. I paused. Good. Just needed to clear my head. He nodded slowly, phone still in hand but untouched now. I didn't know what to say next. I didn't know why this felt loaded. Did Parker say how long he'd be? I asked. Eli shrugged again, then leaned back slightly, resting on his palms, elbows behind him. Probably 20. Traffic's always a mess around this time. His shirt hugged his chest tighter than I remembered. His jeans had rips at the knees. I noticed details I shouldn't. Things I didn't let myself notice when he was just my son's friend. I turned away. Before we continue this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt tension in a room that shouldn't have tension at all? If stories like this keep you watching, subscribe right now, because what happens next will change everything. I tried to act casual. I opened my closet door, pulled out a towel, wiped my neck with it even though the sweat was already dry. I didn't mean to make it weird, Eli said suddenly. I glanced over my shoulder. He was still seated. Still watching me. Still calm. It's not weird, I lied. Just surprised, that's all. He smiled a little. A half smirk, more in his eyes than his mouth. Guess I surprised you last time too. When I helped you with that shelf in the garage. You looked at me like I wasn't supposed to know what I was doing. I chuckled nervously. I guess I didn't expect Parker's friend to know power tools. Maybe I'm not just Parker's friend. The words hit the air like static. I turned around fully now. Met his eyes. He didn't look away. He tapped the bed beside him once. You can sit, if you want. No, I'm good. I'm sweaty. I'll shower. Up to you. His voice was soft. Barely above a whisper. But confident. Grounded. Like the room belonged to him now more than it did to me. A strange memory stirred, weeks ago, Eli laughing in our backyard, tossing a basketball around with Parker. Shirtless. Sun on his skin. I remembered looking too long. Telling myself it was nothing. I hadn't thought of it since. Or maybe I had. More than once. I should get cleaned up, I said, reaching for the bathroom door. Sure, he said again. Take your time. I stepped into the bathroom, but before I shut the door, I glanced back. He was looking at me. Not like a guest. Not like a kid. He looked at me the way people look at something they've already decided to want. Comment the word locked if you've ever had a moment you didn't see coming, until it changed everything. And if this story already has your heart racing, don't forget to subscribe. The next part? It only gets deeper. Your dad's kinda hot, he once joked to my son. I didn't think he meant it. Not really. Just one of those harmless things 20-year-olds say when they're trying to be edgy around friends. Parker had laughed and tossed a chip at him. Eli smirked and shrugged like it was nothing. But I remember the way his eyes flicked toward me after he said it. Quick. Measured. Like he wanted to see if I heard. I had. I just pretended not to. That was the first weekend he stayed over. They were on semester break. The house was full of takeout boxes and midnight laughter. Eli was present. Helpful, even. He offered to wash dishes without being asked. Fixed the cabinet hinge in the kitchen that had been squeaking for months. Always called me sir with a smirk that didn't quite match the word. I noticed things. I told myself not to. Like how he leaned against counters with his arms crossed, forearms flexing under rolled-up sleeves. How he always smelled like warm cedar and clean laundry. How he held eye contact just a second too long. I told myself he was just confident. That I was reading too much into it. That night, God, I remember it too clearly, I went to say goodnight to Parker. His bedroom light was off. But the hallway bathroom was cracked open, light spilling across the carpet. I knocked softly. No answer. I peeked in. Eli stood at the sink, shirtless, brushing his teeth. He caught my eyes in the mirror. His mouth was foamed, his skin damp from the shower, hair pushed back. Neither of us said anything. He didn't rush. Didn't cover up. Just finished brushing, rinsed, wiped his face, then nodded once at me as he passed by in nothing but loose shorts. I remember the silence stretching behind him like a thread I didn't know what to do with. I didn't sleep well that night. It wasn't guilt. It was the knowing. The awareness that something had passed between us that wasn't spoken, but wasn't imagined either. I told myself it was nothing. But I kept thinking about the way he looked over his shoulder. The calmness. The ease. The way I stood frozen in the hallway like someone who'd just opened the wrong door. And didn't want to close it again. If you've ever felt something unspoken, but undeniable, comment the word almost below. And make sure you're subscribed, because in the next chapter, one of those almosts turns into something real. I can go, if it makes you uncomfortable, he says, but doesn't move. He's still sitting on my bed. Same position. Same stillness. Legs apart, forearms resting on his knees, back slightly hunched, casual on the surface, but I could feel the charge behind it. Like the room had shifted degrees when I wasn't looking. I wiped my hands with the towel again, more to keep them busy than dry. I should have walked to the bathroom. Should have said something safe. But I didn't. I stood in the middle of the room, somewhere between the doorway and the bed, between logic and whatever this was becoming. He tilted his head slightly, just enough to meet my eyes. I didn't mean to cross a line. My throat was dry. You didn't. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure. Not about what this meant. Not about what I wanted. Not even about where to look. He leaned back, arms behind him again. His shirt pulled across his chest, his jeans creased where his thighs stretched the denim. He looked comfortable. But not unaware. Like he knew exactly how this looked. Like he planned it. I cleared my throat. Parker won't be long. You can wait downstairs if you want. He smiled faintly. Yeah, I could. But he didn't move. I didn't either. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was waiting. Watching. He shifted slightly on the bed, gaze soft but unshaking. You always this quiet, or just with me? I blinked. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged. Just an observation. You talk around people. But with me, it's like you're listening harder than you're speaking. I looked down at my hands. Maybe I don't know what to say. He nodded like that made sense. You don't have to say anything. But we both knew that wasn't true. Because everything unsaid was sitting in the space between us, heavy and loud. I walked to the dresser. picked up a shirt. Folded it. Unfolded it again. He watched every move like it mattered. "I remember the first time you looked at me differently," he said, voice low. "Garage. That day I fixed the shelf. I stopped folding." I didn't say anything, I murmured. "You didn't have to." He leaned forward again, elbows to knees. "You looked away too fast. Like you were scared I'd see it." I turned to face him. "See what?" He gave me a look. Not smug. Not smug at all. Just sure. Grounded. See that I wasn't the only one thinking it. I exhaled slowly. My pulse was everywhere. This wasn't about a locked door. This was about a door I'd never opened. The one I kept closed so long, I forgot what it felt like to even reach for the handle. "I'm not trying to mess with you," he added. "I'm not stupid. I know what this looks like. I just..." He hesitated. Looked down at his hands. Then back up. "I wanted to know if I made it up. Or if you've been feeling it too." I stepped back from the dresser. My mouth opened. Then closed. "You're not saying anything," he said quietly. I nodded, barely. "I don't know what I'm allowed to say." If you've ever stood in front of something you couldn't name, but couldn't deny either, comment the word "open" below. And subscribe if you're still watching, because the next part? That's where the silence finally breaks. I used to think silence was strength. That if I kept things inside long enough, they'd disappear. But silence doesn't erase anything. It just buries it where you can't look until someone else does. And right now, Eli was looking. Not just at me. Into me. And I knew he wouldn't say it, but he felt the weight I carried. The hesitation that wasn't about him. It was about me, and something that started long before he ever stepped foot in my house. I was 13 the first time it happened. His name was Drew. He was a neighbor's nephew, in town for the summer, and he had a crooked smile that made my stomach feel wrong in a way I didn't have words for back then. He wore old baseball caps backwards, always smelled like vanilla gum, and called me C like we'd known each other longer than we had. I remember the night it clicked. We were lying on the roof of my dad's shed, looking up at the stars, sharing a bag of sour candy. He nudged my arm with his, playfully, again and again. I laughed, shoved him back. And then he just looked at me. Longer than he should have. Not with question. With curiosity. Like he wanted to know something he wasn't sure I knew about myself yet. I felt heat bloom in my chest. My pulse was in my ears. I remember laughing, too loud, and throwing a candy at him to break the moment. He grinned. Didn't push it. But after that, I never looked at him the same. And when he left that August, I stood behind the screen door and watched his truck pull away, heart hammering like I'd missed something important, but had no idea what to call it. I never told anyone. Because where I grew up, boys didn't talk about boys like that. So I folded the memory up like a paper crane and buried it under all the expectations. Football. Girlfriends. Toughness. Control. And eventually, it got quiet. Or so I thought. Until years later, in my 20s, I felt that same flutter again, this time at the gym, watching a man adjust the weight bench beside me. I looked away. Told myself it was admiration. Envy. Anything but what it really was. And so it went. 4 decades. A life lived on the edge of honesty. 100 moments that almost became something more, until I blinked, smiled, and let them pass like traffic in the opposite lane. It wasn't that I never felt it. It was that I never let myself answer back. Until now. Because Eli wasn't the first boy I noticed. Just the first one who noticed back. "If you tell me to leave," he said, voice steady but quiet, "I will. Right now." I looked up. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't relaxed. His shoulders were tense, but not in defense, in vulnerability. His hands rested on his knees, fingers loosely clasped, but I could tell he was holding something back. Maybe everything. The silence between us had gone too far now. It wasn't passive anymore. It was intentional. We were sitting inside it like a storm we refused to name. I swallowed hard. Eli. I mean it, he said, cutting me off gently. I'm not trying to trap you or make things weird. I just need to know I'm not crazy. He stood up, slowly. Walked toward the window, stood by the frame but didn't look outside. He crossed his arms, then dropped them again. His body couldn't settle. He turned to face me. Finally. I've seen the way you look at me. Don't pretend you haven't. My breath caught in my chest. I wasn't looking, I said, automatically. He raised his eyebrows. That's the best you've got? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Maybe I was, I admitted. But not like that. Not inappropriately. Eli stepped closer. His voice didn't rise, didn't shift into anger. He just spoke like someone who'd waited long enough. Not inappropriately, he repeated. So what do you call the way your eyes drop when I take off my shirt? Or the way your voice gets softer when we're alone? I stayed seated. Watching him. Trying not to flinch under the truth. It's not that I haven't felt something, I said, barely above a whisper. It's that I never let myself admit it. He nodded slowly. I figured. And maybe you didn't need to, I added, voice cracking. Maybe you shouldn't have. Why? He asked. Because it's inconvenient? Because you're 20. Because you're my son's friend. Because I've spent most of my life trying to unfeel things like this before they could grow teeth. Eli stepped even closer. His presence filled the space in a way that didn't feel dangerous, just true. He didn't touch me. Didn't sit. Just stood in front of me, watching. And I couldn't look away. My voice trembled. Why are you doing this? He smiled sadly. Because you're the first man I ever wanted to mean something to. I don't know what happened first, the ache in my chest, or the tear that finally slipped past my eye. But I didn't wipe it. I let it fall. I let him see it. Eli sat beside me then, slowly, with care. Like I might break if he moved too fast. We didn't speak for a long moment. Then, softly, he said, I don't need you to say anything tonight. I don't even need you to feel it the way I do. He paused. His voice thinned. I just didn't want to leave without telling the truth. I looked at him. Really looked. The way his mouth pressed slightly to one side when he was nervous. The way his eyes didn't flinch anymore when I met them. The way he'd always been right there, not loud, not forceful, just present. I don't know what to do with this, I said finally. He smiled, barely. You don't have to do anything. Then, after a beat. But don't pretend it didn't happen. I nodded. I won't. And even though there was no kiss, no touch, not even a brush of his hand. Something had shifted. Something I couldn't name yet. But it was real. And it was here. And it wasn't leaving. He didn't ask. He just leaned in, gentle, like a question in motion. Like he needed to give me time to stop him. But I didn't move. Because I didn't want him to stop. His lips brushed mine, barely touching. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't wild. It was curious. Soft. The kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything except presence. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. I didn't realize my eyes were still open until his closed, and I followed. We kissed like people who didn't know where the edge was, so we moved slowly, 1 inch at a time. He pulled back just slightly, eyes flicking up to mine, waiting. I didn't speak. I kissed him again. This time, I tilted my head. Let my hand graze his jaw. He exhaled into me, shaky, controlled, and pressed in closer. There was no rush. Just skin. Just breath. Just heat under the surface of something we'd both been circling without touching for too long. The room didn't spin. It stilled. Like everything around us went quiet to make space for this moment. He brought a hand to the back of my neck, careful, steady. I mirrored it, my palm resting gently on his chest, feeling his heartbeat stammer beneath his shirt. We pulled apart again, barely. Then leaned in again. And again. No words. Just that language that lives somewhere between a sigh and a surrender. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was safe. We shifted on the bed slowly, knees brushing, elbows bumping, his fingers catching in the hem of my shirt, not to take it off, just to hold it like something grounding him. His forehead touched mine. We sat there, still pressed together, our lips parted but our breathing shared. His eyelashes brushed my cheek when he blinked. I couldn't remember the last time someone touched me this way, not like a body to hold, but like a truth to feel. I closed my eyes again and let it wash over me. The warmth. The quiet. The weight of being wanted and not questioned. For once, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. And that was the scariest part. Because this wasn't just about what we wanted. It was about what we'd both stopped believing we deserved. He pulled back again, this time further. Looked at me like he was trying to memorize the exact way I looked in that moment. I smiled faintly. Not because I knew what to say. But because I didn't need to. He placed his hand over mine. Squeezed it once. I didn't plan this, he whispered. Me either, I replied. But somehow, it still felt like home. If you've ever been kissed in a way that made you feel real, comment the word "seen" below. And subscribe right now. Because next, they face the morning after, and silence is no longer an option. You made coffee like it's a shield, he said, watching me from the kitchen doorway. I didn't look at him. Just kept stirring the mug, even though the coffee was already black. I didn't know what to do with my hands. So I gave them something to do. I wiped the counter that didn't need wiping. Washed a clean dish. Checked the fridge like something new might have appeared overnight. He sat on the stool behind me, elbows on the island. Calm. Steady. Like the night before hadn't tipped the entire world sideways. But for me, everything felt louder. The hum of the refrigerator. The tap of my ring against the mug. The silence behind his breath. You're still overthinking it, he said gently. I finally turned. Slowly. He was barefoot, hair still messy from sleep, wearing the same shirt he had on last night. It looked different in the daylight. So did he. And so did I. I don't know how to be okay with wanting this, I said. He nodded. Not dismissive. Not surprised. Just like he understood. You already are, he said. You just haven't accepted it yet. I set the mug down. The weight of his words settled in the space between us. He didn't come closer. Didn't push. Just sat there, soft-eyed and still, like he was giving me room to meet myself where I was too afraid to go. And the worst part? I wanted to. Not for him. For me. I didn't mean to fall for him, I whispered to a friend on the phone weeks later. But I think I did. There's a long pause on the other end. Then just a quiet, understanding breath. No judgment. No lecture. I hang up and sit in the silence of my car a little longer, staring out at the grocery store parking lot like the world should have tilted by now. But it didn't. Because life didn't turn cinematic after that night. There were no grand confessions. No dramatic music. No whispered vows under moonlight. There was just more. More mornings. More cups of coffee made without asking. More casual dinners where we sat a little closer than we used to. More laughter in the hallway. More "you look good today" said in a voice just low enough to feel private. We didn't put a name to it. We didn't tell Parker. Not because we were ashamed. But because we were still learning what this was. It didn't feel like a secret. It felt like a seed, buried deep and growing quietly. And that was enough. There were nights where we'd fall asleep with our backs barely touching, then wake tangled like we couldn't remember when the space between us disappeared. I stopped flinching when he touched me in the kitchen. Stopped questioning it when he handed me a hoodie without asking if I was cold. And he never stopped watching me the way he always had. Not like I was a mystery, but like I was something worth waiting to understand. Parker invited us both to dinner one Friday. Said he missed the old trio. I almost said no. But Eli said we should go. So we did. We sat around the table, passing salad bowls and making fun of Parker's Spotify choices. The air was light. Familiar. And just when I thought maybe this was what normal felt like again, I felt Eli's fingers brush mine under the table. It was the faintest touch. A ghost of pressure. Then his hand slid over mine. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't look at him. Didn't need to. I just turned my palm up. Laced our fingers. And kept talking to my son about weekend plans. Because sometimes, the loudest truths live in the softest moments. Some loves are built in the quiet. In the pauses. In the locked doors that never needed keys. Comment the word real if you've ever found something true where you didn't expect it. And subscribe, because love isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's whispered.